Hey, welcome back to Coffee, Cows, and Crops. I'm your host, Shelby Dillman, and this special episode is brought to you in part by Peace Region Living Labs. The PRLL brings farmers and ranchers together with scientists and producer groups in our agricultural community to solve climate change challenges. The following segment is part of the Peace Region Living Lab extension package. For more information, please visit peacelivinglabs.ca. On today's episode, I've got a special guest who also works with Peace Region Living Labs, Monika Benoit. She's going to talk to us about socioeconomics. It was kind of a scary word to me. I had no idea what it meant, but she breaks it down really well, and she'll be able to explain it to you in a way that I understood it, and so can you. So stay tuned. Alrighty, so I'd like to welcome Monika Benoit. She's going to come and talk to us a little bit about socioeconomics, and that's a new word to me. So she's going to help me chunk it down so I can understand it and what it's all about. How are you today, Monika?
I'm good, thanks, Shelby.
Good. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to teach me something new. So I'm pretty excited to learn about this new fancy term and what it's all about.
Yeah, I'm happy to share, and it's something that a few years ago I didn't get so excited about, but I do find socioeconomics and it's how it interacts in agriculture and in adopting new practices and trying new things, and yeah, it's very interesting to me anyway.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of a daunting word. I feel like it might be a
Yeah.
little overwhelming to some.
Yeah, I think so. And I think in our everyday as farmers and ranchers, we don't talk about it per se. I mean, of course, the basic definition of socioeconomic factors is relating to or concerned with the interaction of social and economic factors. So how do economics influence a farm or ranch, and how does it influence decision making in particular? And then the social factors, and that's the people side of things. So how do different relationships and people's mindsets and paradigms, perspectives, how does that influence how they farm, how they manage things, how they make decisions? So for the Peace Region Living Lab, that is what we're looking at. And I think, and I guess can I just do an overview of the Living Lab? Just a brief, would that be a good
Okay.
fit in?
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. So the Peace Region Living Lab is a Alberta, BC Peace Region wide project looking at practices that are thought to, hypothesized to be positive towards climate change. So better soil management, carbon sequestration, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and improving on it, other co-environmental benefits, things such as water infiltration rates, just soil structure, maybe things like pollinators, that sort of a thing. So overall, the project is looking at 56 sites across the Alberta and BC piece where on producer land, producers have opted in to do this. These are practices that they're trying themselves. It's not driven by researchers, but the producers have said, this is what I want to try. And then our Living Lab team has come in to measure it. So the project is led and funded by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada on that end. And then on the Peace Region end, we have 8 partner groups, including Peace Country Beef and Forage Association as a partner. So the producer groups are leading this end of it, and that's a really exciting part to have all of the groups come together. But I do think it's important that the socioeconomic factors are looked at, because it doesn't matter if a practice sequesters a whole bunch of carbon or eliminates greenhouse gas emissions if it doesn't cash flow on a farm, if it doesn't if it's not profitable. So I think that part is really, really important, and that I'm excited to look at that because there's lots of talk about it, but to actually dig into it and in the Peace Region in our local context, I think is important.
Okay, yeah, and I think it's kind of fun too how like all those groups get to work together and especially over kind of a broad area, because like the piece is pretty big, so it kind of gives everybody a bit of a taste for it no matter where they live in our region. So it kind of like it hits close to home and
Yeah,
people could
for
see it
sure.
for what it is. Yeah.
For sure. And neat for the Alberta and BC piece to work together because we have almost more similarities than say the northern Alberta, the northern BC piece that with southern BC and northern Alberta with southern Alberta. So it's neat to erase that border and just work together and learn from each other.
Yeah, definitely, because like even like down south things are really different. So it is
Yeah.
kind of neat to kind of to blur that border and work collectively. So that's really helpful and kind of brings people closer and brings people together.
Yes, definitely.
So what does socioeconomics mean to producers?
Well, I think it's not something that, to consciously like manage or work on, but the economic part, if we break it down, is something that I think everyone is very aware of and trying to be profitable, I think is the most important thing. So that is something that having good financial management and all the record keeping and that sort of a thing. And when you're trying something new, something that we're trying to figure out as part of this project is what do we need to know? What numbers do we need to know to, make a quick decision? Even should I try this? What do I need to consider? Do I need to consider how much work it's going to be? Because labor, of course, is a big factor.
Mm-hmm.
And just the cash flow. If it's gonna, do you need to invest extra equipment? What is the input costs? And then, of course, what how will that affect my yields? Will I have a loss of income? Say if you're doing a cover crop in a grain cropping situation where you wouldn't harvest a crop, or it's not going to grow, or so all of those factors. So I think most people are very aware of the economic side of it. The social part too is it's an interesting one, and I think that's the relationships people have within their farm families, where different generations, where someone maybe the younger generation wants to try something new, and then the older generation isn't so keen on that. So those factors, and I don't know, for producers to understand that and perspectives of say of the senior generation and respecting their knowledge and understanding why they might not want to try something new, and then the other way where why for the senior generations to understand why up and coming their sons and daughters and other family members or partners might want to try something new that hasn't been done. I think that's important just to recognize the different perspectives. And then just the dynamic of relationships and community. Of course, when people are trying something new, sometimes that's frowned upon by neighbors. So that's a factor to be looked at. And I think overall for this project, one of the purposes is to kind of understand what socioeconomic factors are affecting farmer decision making, and to share that possibly with policy making going forward, where government policy is saying, well, everyone should adopt cover cropping because it sequesters carbon and does all these great things. But then if you don't understand the socioeconomic factors of it, it just doesn't, it's not going to work. And farmers and ranchers aren't going to adopt things that don't work. So I think it's just a really important piece of understanding what is going on at the ground level. And something might look good on paper, maybe it works in a plot, but why aren't people adopting it and doing it in real life? And I think that's what we're trying to capture. And I think the other piece that is really interesting is just how unique the Peace region is. Like, as you mentioned, neat to be working with the Alberta and BC Peace. And there are lots of factors where we're different than other regions, our northern location and that sort of thing. So that's something that we're really excited to dig into, and hopefully some more research will come out of that, different research projects on why and how the Peace region is unique.
Yeah, that is definitely, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head on that one. Because, like, even when I was in school in Olds a couple years ago, taking environmental reclamation, I remember distinctly in my soils class how my teacher, she'd always say how, like, our soil conditions and everything are so unique for the whole province, especially from when I was like down in the Olds area. So we're kind of in our little world of our own, and it's kind of fun because there's, I guess it's just so unique, and there's a lot of different opportunities we can take. Whereas some other locations across the province, there's not a whole lot. Like you kind of have to work with what you got. And a lot of proof is in the pudding. Like you said, people want to see these projects and stuff work. And they're like, ooh, they can be kind of apprehensive at times. Like, why would I want to do this? And then you see it work and they're like, oh, well, maybe I'll try it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really important part of the project is that this is all we do actually we have three plot sites. Mara up in Fort Vermilion, Napera is hosting, I think they're doing two in Sarda by Donnelly. They have three different plots as part of the project, but the rest of it is all at a farm or ranch level where the farmers and ranchers are making the decisions. They are all of the management is theirs, and the project is just simply measuring, which is really hard for the researchers because when things happen and things change, which I think the other piece with the socioeconomic piece is really documenting where, you know, someone has a plan, and this project is 5 years long. So we're into this growing season, 2024 will be year 3, where this was the plan for the 5 years that they're going to implement. Maybe it's rotational grazing, and over that 5 years, how many things are going to change? And we've already had changes in ownership of land within the project, or who's like rental agreements and that sort of thing have changed. So it's, you know, it's all well and good to say I'm going to do this, but real life happens and you have to be flexible and you have to shift and change and plan and replan. So I
Yeah.
think that's something that the project, the socioeconomic piece, is to capture those changes in decisions and, you know, document that this, you know, this wasn't the plan and it didn't follow the, you know, a research protocol like a research plot would, but it's real life, and these are the numbers that came out of it. So I think that's a really important piece, that it's, you know, on the ground, and it's really challenging to measure because it is real life and the weather changes and, you know, all of those challenges. So it's going to be interesting what comes out of it in the end.
Yeah, that's right. Like all these like factors, all these variables that are essentially out of your control. And that's the thing, like everyone expects things to go smoothly on paper, but like you said, this is real life and things can go sideways, but we make the best of it. We document that and move on.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's perfect. That answered my next question. Why does it matter? And those are all super incredibly valid reasons. And I think that's like a very good take home. That's for people to consider. So that was great.
Yeah.
So how does it impact you and your farm, for example?
Oh, I don't know if I have authorization of my in-laws to share. I actually think that this is one of the reasons why this interests me so much. And so I farm with my husband and his parents, and we have a grain farm west of High Prairie, and that's how my husband grew up on that farm. Well, we started a new venture when him and I started farming a few years ago, but I also like cows. So I'm allowed to, I always say allowed jokingly, to have, I do some custom grazing, and I have a few heifers this year, but that's separate from the grain farm. And I do find the social factors of grain farming and the differences with that, and with ranching and, you know, grass management and the just that whole mindset. It's very fascinating, and I do
Mhm.
think in our I think I guess in 2016 we started officially farming, and the changes that we've made have been quite not big, but definitely we're farming different than my father-in-law and his brothers did for their most of their career. And it's been a delicate balance of respecting each other's perspectives. I think that, you know, my father-in-law and his two brothers, they went through the change to no-till like almost 30 years ago now. And I love the story of my grandpa-in-law, so my husband's grandpa, who of course started the farm and broke the land. And when they started to switch to no-till, he was just beside himself that this is the worst crop we've ever had. We can't see the plants and it's not black and the soil's never going to warm up. And that he couldn't even look at it. And so then I don't remember what happened in between there, but a few weeks later they came back and it was just the most beautiful wheat crop they had ever had. And of course they never looked back. So it's interesting as we've brought up different ideas, just even simple things like diversifying our crop rotation. And one big one for us has been adding fall rye. Another one, we've integrated humics into our fertility program a bit, though that is a challenging one. But just those things where my father-in-law, it's so new and it's not what he's always done, and to gently remind him of when he had to convince his dad to try no-till. And I mean, he has seen the benefits and would have done the same thing could he go back. So yeah, that piece has been very interesting to observe, and how why doesn't it work, but sometimes it's hard for people to change. And I mean, we would like to try other things as well, but there are limitations with equipment and time, and how much labor is it going to take, and just more risk, of course.
Right.
So I think, yeah, that's been very interesting, but but they have been pretty good about supporting my cow habit, which is pretty interesting on that social side. And yeah, I mean, the economics on our farm, of course, we're always running numbers and doing our spreadsheets, and that is just so important. If there's ever an idea of something new, then the spreadsheet or the scrap piece of paper comes out and we're penciling it out and all of that stuff. So I think it's been a good exercise to work on this in the living lab side of things, because it gives another perspective. And yeah, I think it's neat to look at it too within your own farm family.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's so cool. And I like hearing those little stories because like I know
yeah,
like I'm a cow person. I honest to God, I don't know beans about crops. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah.
And like even like with people not wanting to cope well with change, when I used to do custom ranching when I was a working cowboy, I go to some outfits and they did everything on four-wheelers and they've never
Hmm.
used horses and they're like, oh, we don't want no stilly horses. And then things
Yeah.
just went so much quicker, so much smoother. And so yeah, it's just kind of like getting over that threshold of change and being like, hey, rip off the band-aid. It's not so bad.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? To be able to evaluate the risk and decide to try it or not, and being open to new suggestions. And because sometimes, I mean, back our fall rye story, I mean, that has been, I guess I shouldn't say this, and we'll have the market will be flooded. But that's done really well on our farm, and we have seen changes in the soil, and there's profitability there. So it is very interesting. I actually seeded some into some pasture land, and I'm very curious how that will go this year, because I grazed it all last year, and now this year, if I don't keep on top of it, it will head out. So maybe we'll
Right.
combine it.
That's so cool. That's neat. Um, and then Elena, she had a question. Is there like a difference between regular, if it's such a thing, like regular economics versus socioeconomics? And is there like a collective versus individual? I'm not really sure how to compartmentalize that question, but
Yeah, well, I think I know what she's getting at, and I mean by education, I have an animal science degree. I'm not a socioeconomist, but I mean, straight up looking at the economics, um, is one thing, and I think one thing that I really liked about this Living Lab project, and I was so surprised when that it was an Ag Canada project, and they were really emphasizing it when we were putting the proposal together. And like I said before, a practice might work on paper, and it might sequester lots of carbon and reduce greenhouse gas emissions and all of those great things. And it also might pencil out on paper, it, reduces your fertility costs and doesn't decrease yield or whatever it might be. But why isn't anyone trying it, or why is no one adopting it? And I think that part is just so important. So I think you can do the economics, but to add in the social part, which is like the people piece, and people who have taken holistic management or ranching for profit and kind of looked at those 3 pillars, that every time you make a decision, you consider the land or the environment. How will it impact, your land management? How will it impact your economics? Is it actually profitable? And third, how will it affect the people? And, something, if the people don't want to do it and they're not on board, then it just doesn't work. So I think to capture that, I mean, on a day-to-day farm level, maybe understanding how your father-in-law, understanding his perspective of why he won't want to try something. But I really think at a policy level and, government wanting, we were seeing off-calf programs and all these different things coming out, they wanting adoption of these things, but why isn't it always so simple? And I think that the social side is the main piece. So I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Yeah, I think that I definitely have a better grasp for it now. That definitely resonates with me.
Yeah, it is. It's really, an important piece. And we don't talk about it. And I think the other thing too is that having it integrated into research projects is also really important. So when, Peace Country Beef and Forage and SARDA and all these other groups are doing research projects, and even, at other levels of research, that looking at that piece is just so important. And I think it's hard to do that. How do you quantify things, and how do you put things, onto paper? And part of it is storytelling. I think that is a piece of it. What is the narrative around that? But I am, I'll just name, we have a couple of really great scientists working with us on this project. Dr. Emma Stevens, she's working out of Edmonton with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and she is an economist, but she's really super at looking at numbers and trends in numbers with practices. So it's really neat to learn and work with her. And then another scientist out of actually the University of Victoria, Brooke Hayes, she's working on her PhD and kind of looking at the relationship between soil health and farmer mental health, which is a very interesting perspective. So they have both been guiding and helping along on this, and I'm more coordinating things in between. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, that definitely helps put the puzzle pieces together. And I finally understand what socioeconomics means.
Now you're going to think about it all the time.
Yeah, I'll like see things. I'm like, wow, that's socioeconomics happening right in front of me.
Yeah. And I think too that, when you define socioeconomics, I think that also includes some, in socioeconomic research, they also look at things like, occupation and age and income and education levels, things like that. And I would say we're less focusing on really specific things like that, but more, some of the, I guess, social factors.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. That's good to know. I guess that's where the socio part comes in.
Yeah.
Neat. Thanks for tuning in to this special guest episode. Like what you hear? Visit us on our social media and drop some suggestions for topics and guests. This segment has been brought to you by the Peace Region Living Lab. Funding for this project, in part, has been provided by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada through the Agricultural Climate Solutions Living Labs program. Follow PRLL on Facebook and Twitter, or visit their website at peacelivinglabs.ca for more information.